we shall move to questions without notice. Are there any questions? And I give the call to the Honourable the Leader of the Opposition.
My question is to the Prime Minister. Labor's wasteful spending is fuelling core inflation. Labor's taxes are punishing aspiration, and Australians have suffered the worst collapse in living standards in the developed world. Why are Australians continuing to pay the price for Labor's economic incompetence?
Call to the Prime Minister.
I thank you for the question. We had inflation figures earlier today that showed a rate of 4, down from 4.2. We continue to work on cost of living as our #1 priority. And indeed, today of all days, just 1 week from when a whole lot of those measures cut in, is an appropriate time to answer a question about living standards. Because next week, every Australian worker will get a tax cut. Every worker, including a significant increase for those who are on the minimum wage. We know that those opposite were opposed to that, and we're going to repeal the legislation, just like they're saying they'll repeal the legislation that's currently before the Senate. So on July 1, next week, we have another tax cut for every single taxpayer. They get another one the following July. We get super paid on payday, important reform. Importantly, today I met with a lovely couple and a young bub who are getting the expansion of paid parental leave to a full 26 weeks and superannuation paid on paid parental leave, something that some of the leaders of the right-wing parties over there and in the other place have said is a waste. One of the right-wing leaders has actually said that paid parental leave is bad because people will get pregnant and have a baby just to get paid parental leave. An extraordinary statement, Mr Speaker, which I don't think has been repudiated yet. We've made sure that every single one of our 137 urgent care clinics are now open, well before July 1. And they will become a permanent part of Medicare after July 1. Our 22 endo and pelvic pain clinics will be expanded to include services for menopause and perimenopause on July 1. Our record hospital funding through the National Health Reform Agreement will be delivered, $25 billion. The $20,000 instant asset write-off for small business will be made permanent. And next week will also mark 1 year since the launch of our Cheaper Home Batteries program. Our goal was 1 million batteries by 2030. We've seen an extraordinary 450,000 installed. Families and small businesses permanently cutting their power bills. And we'll deliver next week our ban on supermarket price gouging. All of these measures about cost of living, all of them showing what the priorities of this government are, all of them opposed by those opposite.
The House comes to order. We'll hear from the honourable member for Solomon.
Thanks, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Veterans Affairs. What does the official opening of the atrium and Anzac Hall at the Australian War Memorial last night mean for Australia's commemoration of our military service?
Give a call to the Minister for Veterans Affairs and the Minister for Defence Personnel.
Thank you, Speaker, and I thank the member for his question, his important connection himself to that sacred place, the Australian War Memorial. It was wonderful to welcome so many from across our parliament to the Australian War Memorial last night to mark the official opening of Anzac Hall and the atrium, along with the Governor-General. Most importantly, we were joined by many ADF members and veterans, all with a very special connection to the memorial. The Australian War Memorial is our national home of commemoration, a sacred place. The roll of honour on the walls of the War Memorial features the names of over 103,000 Australians who have lost their lives in war, conflict and peacekeeping operations. Behind each of those names is a person and families who loved them. The Australian War Memorial shares their stories and the stories of all those who have served in our nation's uniform. This expansion of the War Memorial provides the opportunity to properly tell the stories of modern conflicts, such as Afghanistan, peacekeeping operations and the Middle East, their causes, conduct and consequences. This has been a nationally significant project supported by the opposition and government. This expansion to the War Memorial delivers on the vision of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean, for a shrine, an archive and a museum. The expansion has been achieved through the work and vision of many. There were almost 2,000 workers on the project and more than 100 of those were veterans, continuing their service through this project that commemorates their mates. And they've not just expanded what was there, they've painstakingly repaired and replaced what was needed to preserve a memorial built during the Depression for generations to come. This included also the installation of the largest geothermal system in the Southern Hemisphere to regulate the temperature in the memorial and to protect its artefacts, as well as those of us there on a cold Canberra night. Despite the scale of the construction that's taken place over the years, they've kept the doors open 365 days a year, even though through the depths of COVID, always been conscious that for anyone who seeks to visit the memorial, to learn and commemorate the service of our nation, they should be able to do so. I thank all of those that have been part of this important national project and look forward to the final elements coming together by 2028, the pre-1914 galleries and an interactive learning centre, to make sure generations to come can learn our nation's history of service, of sacrifice, and to never forget the great cost of war, lest we forget.
And to associate to the Minister, the honourable member for Riverina on indulgence.
Thank you, Speaker, and I acknowledge the Prime Minister and the Opposition Leader for making sure that all parliamentarians were able to attend what was a nationally significant event. All of us who went to that special event will remember the fine words spoken by each and everybody, but particularly Matt Anderson, the Australian War Memorial Director. He has overseen the construction of something very, very special to our nation's heart. And he's done so with COVID and with so many other setbacks, but done it he has. And there are 103,000 names of men and women too on the rolls of honour. And we should never forget that the front doors of the Parliament, indeed the Prime Minister's office right through, line up with the front doors of the War Memorial right through to the tomb of the unknown soldier. That War Memorial has been made an even more special place of remembrance because of the construction work that has gone on, and to each and every person who has had some large or small part, I say congratulations, lest we forget.
Give a call to the honourable member for Goldstein.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. Core inflation has risen from 3% to 3.6% over the last year. Under this Treasurer, interest rates have gone up 15 times, increasing the cost of a typical new mortgage by $30,000 a year. Following the Treasurer's failed budget of broken promises and higher taxes, was the Treasurer's promise of inflation has turned the corner a further broken promise, or is it just due to economic incompetence?
Give a call to the Treasurer.
Mr Speaker, nothing darkens their mood like another fall in inflation. And that's what we saw in the figures today. The second consecutive month we saw inflation go down in our economy, which is terribly inconvenient to those opposite, Mr Speaker, but a welcome outcome nonetheless, Mr Speaker. Now, there are inflationary pressures in our economy, and they're made worse by the war in the Middle East. And this is a point that has been endorsed by the Shadow Treasurer on social media this morning, actually, Mr Speaker. And what the Shadow Treasurer did, Mr Speaker, in agreeing that there are inflationary pressures out there, and we're obviously not complacent about the inflationary pressures that are still in our economy, but he conceded on social media today that the war in the Middle East has made our inflation challenge worse, Mr Speaker. I'm told that he agreed with that on social media today. But more than that, in his typically helpful way, Mr Speaker, The Shadow Treasurer has pointed out on social media this morning that inflation has come down substantially, and he attributes that to the budget settings, Mr Speaker. And I'm not saying he does that deliberately, Mr Speaker. He does that accidentally. But what he says is, he says that the war in Iran has pushed up inflation in our economy. He points out that it's come down substantially. That's also true. And in his usual ham-fisted way, he attributes that to my budget settings, Mr Speaker. I'm not sure that that was the point that he was trying to make. I'm not sure, but it is very kind of him nonetheless. I appreciate him every day, but particularly today. Particularly today, Mr Speaker, for making that point. Second point I'd make is this. Second point I'd make is this. If the Shadow Treasurer wants to conflate inflationary pressures in our economy.
The manager is entitled. The member for Leichhardt. The manager is entitled. The member for Hunter. When I'm speaking, do not interject. The manager on a point of order.
Speaker, it goes to relevance. Core inflation has risen from 3% to 3.6% in the last 12 months. That's what the question was about.
It was.
I'll hear from the Leader of the House.
Mr Speaker, just in case the Manager of Opposition Business missed the question, it referred to core inflation, to interest rates, to the entire budget and to inflation again.
The question did contain interest rates, the rising cost of a mortgage and also the Treasurer's budget and tax. So there was quite a little bit more into that question than just what the manager had indicated to the House. But the Treasurer was just about to talk about an inflation, so I'm going to listen carefully to make sure that if he's talking about inflation, he's talking about the question that he was asked, not another topic. The Treasurer has the call.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I'm asked about inflation and budget settings. I pointed out inflation came down again for the second consecutive month today, and I've run through all the other figures in a press conference earlier today, Mr Speaker. Now, if the Shadow Treasurer wants to say that all the inflationary pressures in our economy are about government spending, then by his own admission, the extra $110 billion in commitments that they have made over the next 4 years would mean higher inflation and higher interest rates, Mr Speaker. And so he has to choose, Mr Speaker. He has to choose, Mr Speaker. Now, Mr Speaker, the final point I'd make is this. Yesterday I said that one of the reasons why the Liberal Party is dying in the arms of the opposition leader is because he's trying to out nation one nation, and that's increasingly perspective. To be fair to him, Mr Speaker, there is a second reason why the Liberal Party is dying in his arms, and that's the member for Goldstein.
The member for Isaacs and the member for Corwell are now warned. I'm trying to give the call to the member for Bean, and you're not helping. Give the call to the honourable member for Bean.
Thanks, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Housing. What action is the Albanese Labor government taking to help Australians into a home of their own? What policies would make home ownership harder for Australians?
Call to the Minister for Housing, the Minister for Homelessness and the Minister for Cities.
Thank you so much, Speaker, and I thank the member for Bean for his question, and I want to acknowledge the fantastic advocacy that he undertakes in this parliament for his community. Speaker, there is a really important bill before our parliament. This is a bill that is going to deliver a tax cut for every single working Australian, and a bill that will help level the playing field for the first time for Australia's first home buyers. Speaker, these are urgent and important changes for our country to make. If we just step back from the political debate that we're all engaged in, at a time when home ownership rates are falling through the floor for Australia's young people, our country simply cannot keep tilting the playing field away from first home buyers. And, Speaker, that's exactly what our tax reforms are seeking to change. Now, Mr Speaker, when members vote on this legislation on Thursday, they're going to face a pretty simple choice. Who are they here to fight for? Is it working Australians and aspiring homeowners, or is it the people who already have the system stacked in their favour? Because, Speaker, for me and for the members behind me, this is not a complicated question. We are on the side of first home buyers and we are on the side of working Australians who are trying to get ahead. Now, Speaker, I'm asked about alternatives, and the Liberals and the Nationals have already made their choice. They did it before they even bothered to read the legislation. Speaker, they are going to come into the parliament tomorrow and they are going to vote against a tax cut for every single working Australian. And not just that, Speaker, but they're going to come into this parliament and vote against every single aspiring first home buyer in our country. Now, Speaker, that comes on top of the years that they have spent attacking everything that our government is doing to help young people get into the market. Now, Mr Speaker, I shake my head and wonder what has happened to the party of Robert Menzies. This is a party that once said that it stood up for first home ownership. Today, they are a pathetic shadow of what they once were. And, Speaker, I want to just remind you— I want to remind you—
No. The interjections coming to this minister is unacceptable. I'm not going to tolerate it. And just the yelling while she's on her feet is not on. So, everyone, just fair warning. Just want to hear what the minister is saying for the remainder of this answer.
Thank you so much, Speaker. And I was just taking the parliament through where those opposite have got themselves in terms of first home buyers. And I just want to give you a list, Speaker. They want to scrap Help to Buy, a program that does nothing more than help 10,000 every year first home owners get into the market. Speaker, they've told us that they want to wind back the 5% deposit program, a program that has helped 260,000 Australians get into a home of their own. And Speaker, now they're saying that if they win the next election, they're going to come into this parliament and they're going to choose to use taxpayer dollars to subsidise investors over first home buyers at every single auction across this country. Now, Speaker, those opposite are competing on outrage. We are focused on opportunity. They're the only ones left defending a housing system that isn't working. We're getting on with the job of making it better.
Before I call the member for McCullough, I'll just do a couple of welcomes. I'm pleased to inform the House that in the gallery today is the Honourable Enver Erdogan, Minister in the Parliament of Victoria, and also participants of the Leadership Illawarra program, a 2-year learning program for the region's emerging leaders, as guests of the member for Cunningham. As Local Government Week continues to roll through, I've got some more councillors to acknowledge today. I'll do them in batches. I won't do them all now. Councillor Jill Whittaker, the Mayor of Campbellton City Council, is with us. Councillor Dr Simone Smood, the Mayor of City of Glen Eira, and Councillor Sue Baker, the Mayor of Frankston City Council, are with us today. Give the call to the honourable member for McKellar.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Treasurer. Today, all of Australia's councils undertook the extraordinary step of writing to every federal parliamentarian to warn of the funding crisis affecting local governments across the country. Due to the lack of untied federal funding, councils are struggling to deliver essential services and infrastructure and resorting to large rate rises, including in my electorate of McKellar. Councils are asking that the financial assistance grants be restored to 1% of federal taxation. Will the government consider this?
Good call to the Treasurer.
Thanks, Mr Speaker, and thank you to the honourable member for her important question, and I hope she won't mind me also acknowledging the representatives of local government who are in the House today and in the building this week as well, Mr Speaker. I am aware of the funding ask from the local government community. It's not unusual for local governments or for other important parts of our community to be seeking additional Commonwealth funding. We are big and enthusiastic backers of local governments. We've got a wonderful minister, and Minister McBain, every one of us, big supporters of local governments, and that's because they play a vital role in providing the services and infrastructure that Australians need. And we're backing councils with new funding in the budget already, Mr Speaker. Just last week we delivered $2.9 billion in financial assistance grants for councils, for roads and other services and infrastructure, and we brought that forward to help councils manage the impact of the fuel prices in particular. In the budget, we're boosting funding for councils and communities in a range of other ways. The $2 billion local infrastructure fund is to help local governments get more housing projects over the line. I pay tribute to the Housing Minister for that and the Infrastructure Minister. We've got an additional $780 million for thriving suburbs and growing regions programs, brings our total investment to over $1.7 billion. We've got the Stronger Communities program, the Active Transport Fund, which is another $500 million to invest in community road safety and that's on top of the Roads to Recovery funding. Again, pay tribute to the Transport and Infrastructure Minister for that $1 billion a year.
Order.
And that's direct funding to councils to fix and upgrade local roads as well. And so, Mr Speaker, I am aware of that additional funding request. I engage with councils and local governments in good faith because we value the important work that they do in every single community represented here. But we are already providing substantial new funding for councils in the budget, which was only 6 weeks or so ago.
The call to the honourable member for Chisholm.
Thank you so much, Speaker. My question is to the Treasurer. What do today's inflation figures tell us about the cost of living pressures facing Australians? What action is the Albanese Labor government taking to help people get ahead, and what resistance has there been?
Give the call to the Treasurer.
Thanks, Mr Speaker. The member for Chisholm is a wonderful representative of that proud multicultural community in Melbourne that she represents so well. Mr Speaker, new figures, as I said before, from the Australian Bureau of Statistics show that headline inflation fell in both monthly and annual terms once again today in the new data. Inflation came off substantially in the month of May, and it also moderated in annual terms, and this is the second consecutive month that we have seen inflation fall in our economy. Now, we welcome that development, but we're not complacent about that, even though today's data was much better than the market expected, much better than forecast. We do recognise that people are still under pressure in our communities and in our economy, Mr Speaker. And that's why helping with the cost of living and helping people get ahead are central priorities of this Albanese Labor government. And as the Prime Minister said a moment ago, if you just think about the real change that we are delivering next Wednesday, just the change that we are delivering from the 1st of July, more than 14 million Australians will get another tax cut from this Labor government, opposed by those opposite. The national minimum wage will increase by 6%. Modern award wages will increase by 4.75% following our submission to the annual wage review. Parents will get 26 weeks of paid parental leave, up from 24 weeks. There will be the regular indexation, Mr Speaker. There will also be Australian workers benefiting for the first time from having their super paid at the same time as their salary and their wages, Mr Speaker. There will be the new ban on excessive pricing of groceries. Now, this is on top of the substantial tax reforms that we put in the budget before the parliament to give every working taxpayer 2 more tax cuts in the form of the Working Australian Tax Offset and the standard deduction that those opposite voted against, Mr Speaker. And it's on top of the extension to the fuel excise relief that the Prime Minister announced on the weekend as well. Now, this goes to a very important difference between this side of the House and that side of the House. This side of the House is delivering cost of living relief and delivering real change, Mr Speaker. The 3 right-wing parties over there are standing in the way of that cost of living help that we are delivering, Mr Speaker. They are all united by a divisive anti-worker agenda, every one of them, all 3 of them, Mr Speaker. But whether it's tax cuts for every taxpayer, higher wages for workers or help for first home buyers, we are on the side of workers and first home buyers on this side of the House, and those opposite are against them.
Give the call to the honourable member for Casey.
Thank you, Speaker. And my question is to the Minister for Housing. Now, this morning, the Housing Minister told the ABC that the housing sector was facing
No. The member for Leichhardt will leave the chamber under 94. You don't interject while people are simply asking questions. I don't know why this is so complicated for people. It applies to both sides of the House. People asking questions will be shown respect, and we'll keep doing it if we need to. Member for Casey begins the question.
This morning, the Housing Minister told the ABC the housing sector was facing a market correction. A couple of hours later, the Treasurer said the housing sector was not facing a market correction, with auction clearance rates now at their lowest levels since the pandemic. Who is telling the truth, the Housing Minister or the Treasurer?
Give give a call to the Minister for Housing, the Minister for Homelessness and the Minister for Cities.
I'm just laughing at how they have to egg each other on here. Great question, great question. And it's not a great question, Speaker. And I think those opposite know it.
Order. Order.
Speaker, I want to come back to the central point here because it is a really important one. House prices in our country have risen by 400% in the last 25 years. And I just want to be really clear and direct with the parliament. We cannot allow that to happen again for another generation. If we do, our country will be unrecognisable to us. This has already radically transformed what it means to be aspirational in our country. We've got a generation of young people who tell us repeatedly in polling that they don't think they will ever be able to afford a house in our country. Now, Speaker, any government with any sense of integrity and belief is going to stand up and do something about that.
Order. The Minister will pause. She's 1 minute into her answer. The manager, I want to hear his point of order.
On relevance, Speaker, the Minister hasn't addressed the question. The question is, who was telling the truth, you or the Treasurer? I know you've got a thing about corrections, but we need to hear the truth.
The Leader, I'll hear from the Leader of the House.
Thanks, Speaker. It's completely reasonable in response to a question like that to be talking about what's driving the prices in the market, and that's exactly what's being said.
Yeah, and the manager's entitled to raise his point of order. He is correct that the Minister was asked a question at the end, but you can't selectively phrase bits of the question that you like. Unfortunately, if it's all in there, the Minister's going to have a go probably at all parts of the question, but I'll just make it be directly relevant. She has had a preamble. I'm going to ask her to return to the question.
Thank you, Speaker. And I think we see that point of order getting taken because they don't like to hear the reality of what they've done to themselves. And that is, Speaker, that they are the last people in this country standing who can't see that this housing market is broken. And I'd say to you again, Speaker, if only those opposite had done something about this problem in the 9 years that they sat on the Treasury benches, then we might be in a different position, but you chose not to. What you chose to do...
Look, the member for Casey, the member for Maranoa, the member for Herbert, the manager and the Leader of the Opposition, all simply yelling at once is not going to get the answer you want and is not going to help the parliament. So can I just ask everyone here, from the member for Goldstein down, to just take a breath. No one else is yelling as much as everyone else is here in the front row. Just I need everyone, particularly when the Minister's on her feet, just to... And if the Minister can help the House also by returning to the question, and just... the House will be a lot better for it. Minister.
Speaker, instead of choosing to do something about this problem, they so vacated the field that they chose for the majority of their 9 years in government to not even bother having a Commonwealth Housing Minister. And, Speaker, in that time, in 9 years, in 9 long years around our country, I want to remind the parliament how many social and affordable homes they built. 373, Speaker. That is a national outrage. Speaker, we've got people across that side of the parliament who think that they speak for regional Australia. Well, they chose to build not a single social and affordable home across the entirety of regional and rural Australia. Now, we take a different view. We see the pain this is causing in the lives of the people, not just that we represent, Speaker, but the people that they represent opposite us. And that's why we're standing up and we're acting. We are pulling every lever that the Commonwealth has available to us. And I'd say again to those opposite, it is going to be an inauspicious and short leadership under the member for Hume. I can see that. Let's hope that the leader that follows him takes a different approach to the housing matter.
Before I call the member for Brisbane, I'll do some more welcomes to local councillors. We're joined today by Councillor Sophie Tan, the Mayor of the City of Greater Dandenong, Councillor Stephen Cooman, the Mayor of the City of Casey, Councillor Bilal El Halik, Al Hayek, the Mayor of Canterbury Bankstown, and Councillor Paige Kennett, the Mayor of Knox City Council, and Kevin Lamb and councillors from the Fairfield City Council. Give the call to the member for Brisbane.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Employment and Workplace Relations. How is the Albanese Labor government delivering higher wages? Who has stood in the way of higher wages for Australians?
Call to the Minister for Employment and the Minister for Workplace Relations.
Well, thank you, Speaker, and I'd like to thank the member for Brisbane for that question, but for her ongoing advocacy to get wages moving for Australians. Now, this Labor government is absolutely committed to boosting the pay packets for everyday hard-working Australians. Our government has advocated year on year for a wage increase to our lowest paid workers that rely on minimum award wages. We have legislated to protect penalty and overtime rates for modern award-reliant workers. And of course, we've prioritised fixing a broken bargaining system to improve wages, especially for undervalued, feminised sectors of the economy like in early education. Now, as the Prime Minister has said on so many occasions, early childhood educators deserve more than our thanks. They deserve a pay rise. And that is why the Albanese government continues to back our early educators by locking in a 15% pay rise. Now, Liz, an early educator, said that this pay increase, and I quote, makes a lot of difference so that we can stay in the industry for longer because it's good pay. Now, this Labor government has put gender equality at the heart of the workplace relations system by making it an object of the Fair Work Act, ensuring more women are getting fairer pay for the work that they do. Our laws led to historic wage increases for our aged care workers, most of who are women.
Order.
Our government backed and funded these pay rises to recognise the important work they do. And I'm pleased to report to the House the gender pay gap is now at its record lowest on record, at 11.5%. Now, Speaker, I am asked about who has tried to stand in the way of our plan to get wages moving. Well, of course, it's the three right-wing parties over there. The Liberals, the Nationals, One Nation have stood in the way of our efforts to get wages moving. Together they've opposed our minimum award wage advocacy. Together they voted against higher wages for early educators and aged care. And together they voted to erode penalty rates in this country. And what would have been the cost to ordinary workers if the three right-wing parties got their way? Well, evidence published in news.com today demonstrates that an aged care worker would be $20,000 worse off if those opposite got their way. It is clear that it is only Labor that stands up for ordinary workers in this country, and let's ensure that they are protected from these three right-wing parties.
The call to the honourable member for Lyne.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Order. The member for Lyne has the call.
My question is to the Prime Minister. A new report shows the Prime Minister saved around $200,000 on the sale of 3 investment properties under existing capital gains tax rules. In last month's budget, the Prime Minister broke his promise and changed those rules. Given the Prime Minister's investment success, can he explain why it's fair for him to personally pocket $200,000 and then pull up this ladder of opportunity from millions of aspirational Australians?
Order. I'm ruling that question out of order. It is not within the standing orders, and it is not the minister's within ministerial responsibility. I'm moving to the next question. The member for Bonner has the call. No, the member for Bonner has the call.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. Can the Prime Minister update the House on the government's efforts to end violence against women and children?
The call to the Prime Minister.
I thank the member for Bonner for her question. And we know that she is one of the people, and I accept that it's right across the parliament here, who understand that violence against women and children is a national scourge. It shatters too many families, it devastates too many communities. One life lost to violence is one too many. With advocates and frontline workers, we've worked hard to make a difference, with better services and better laws, and we have seen some progress, but we know there is so much more to do. At last Monday's National Cabinet meeting, I put this on the agenda for the next face-to-face meeting, so we can have a report back from states and territories about the progress that has been made as a result of the face-to-face special meeting of the National Cabinet that I convened during the last term to deal with these issues. We are listening to experts, to frontline workers and victim survivors as we consult on the second national plan to end violence against women and children. And that work is being led by the Minister for Social Services in partnership particularly with the Minister for Women in the other place. Since 2022, we have delivered a record $4.4 billion to tackle family, domestic and sexual violence. 1,400 organisations have been funded, helping almost 500,000 Australians. We've made the Leaving Violence payment permanent, helping nearly 20,000 people have been assisted to leave a violent situation. 10 days paid domestic and family violence leave is now law. We've recruited over 500 new frontline domestic, family and sexual violence workers. This was a commitment that I made as Leader of the Opposition during the term in which I held that office. And we've invested $1 billion in more crisis and transitional accommodation for women and children fleeing family and domestic violence. And given that so much violence does start online, a social media ban for under-16s, along with restricting AI notify apps and stalking tools, is important here. But there will be more to do. As AI continues to become more widespread, this is a challenge for all of us as decision-makers, but importantly, it's a challenge for all of us as a society. Men have an important role to play in supporting women and children in this situation and calling out behaviour from fellow men. We all have a part in addressing this issue and taking action. Every one of us must work together to end violence against women and children towards a future that is better, that is safer, a future without violence, which will be a better society for all of us.
And on indulgence, the member for Lindsay.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I'd like to associate the Coalition with the Prime Minister's words. Sadly, it's our electorate officers that are often the front line of domestic violence, and the number of women that have sat in my office in tears trying to seek a safe place. And it shouldn't be like that. It doesn't matter how much money we are throwing at this issue. It is not going away. And it is our role, every single member in this place, to do more, to listen to those families that are doing it so tough. And the Coalition, although we don't agree on everything, will stand there with the government to try to do our best in our generation to end violence against women and children. Thank you.
Give the call to the honourable member for Lyne.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. A new report shows the Prime Minister saved around $200,000 on the sale of 3 investment properties under existing capital gains tax rules. In last month's budget, the Prime Minister broke his promise and changed those rules. Given the Prime Minister's investment success, can he explain why it's fair for him to make $200,000 and then pull up this ladder of opportunity from millions of aspirational Australians?
I'll hear from the Leader of the House. We'll get through this.
Mr Speaker, I refer to Standing Order 100C, that questions must not reflect on or be critical of the character or conduct of, and it goes through a range of categories, including every member here, their conduct. And there are certain things that can only be challenged. They can be challenged in the House, but only on a substantive motion. That's reflected on page 555 of practice.
Order. We're just going to hear the Leader of the House and then I'll hear the manager as well. But I'd like everyone to be silent on this matter so I can hear and make informed decisions.
And similar reference on page 555 of practice, which refers to the private affairs of a minister, which follows with minister's conduct can only be challenged on a substantive motion. It's been the case, always been the case here.
Yes, and I'll hear now from the manager.
So there's a number of points why this is in order, Speaker. First, the Prime Minister has made statements in this House previously on this matter, including on the 14th of May 2026. It's always been held by Speakers past. It's confirmed in practice and has been argued by the now Leader of the House that questions are allowed to be asked of ministers about statements they have made in this place. Secondly, as the Leader of the House knows, Standing Order 98C says questions can be asked to ministers provided they are officially connected to the matters of public affairs. The question directly references a media report, actually 2 media reports, which goes to the Prime Minister's handling of taxation policy. Obviously, it stands to reason that there wouldn't be such a report if he wasn't the Prime Minister. If the Prime Minister wants to dispute elements of the question, he can do so, but members should be entitled to raise questions about the interaction between tax policy and a minister's own arrangements, which I note also goes to the operation of the Ministerial Code of Conduct.
This is different from the earlier question because it's been rephrased. I was not happy with the direct imputive of the motive for the last question, but this is about a media report, and I've checked that. But the Leader of the House, it says, is not in order for questions to reflect on or be critical of the character, conduct of a private affairs of a minister. And on page 554, also when it lists the form and content of question relating to a minister's public responsibilities, matters of a private nature not related to the public duties of a minister. But the question has been raised. I just want to tell the House I'm not comfortable with this kind of language because you open up a can of worms for everyone to be criticised on their own personal, discussing personal affairs. And that's the issue. Leader of the Opposition, I'm going to allow the question, but I'm just going to remind the House that I like language to be not personal in its nature, to be on the subject and the topic. The member for Lyne has rephrased her question. I thank her for that. Prime Minister has been asked this question. He can answer it in a very broad manner because about the media reports there, and he may have additional information to the House. But I'll give him some latitude regarding the leeway that the question was asked. The Prime Minister.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. I haven't seen the media report, but someone in the media weeks ago was good enough to forward to me the document that was provided by the Liberal Party to them with details. Before
Order. Member McNamara.
The
member for Mitchell.
Before they chose not to run the article because of its nature and its inaccuracies. I simply say this, Mr. Speaker, that all of my arrangements have been declared appropriately. What we are doing here when it comes to housing is wanting to make sure that just as I had the opportunity way back in my 20s to own my own home over my head when I purchased a property to save the researchers in Beecham Street, Marrickville, I want young Australians and people who are now in their 20s and in their 30s to have the same opportunity. And the truth is,
members on my left.
The truth is
Member for
that
Lyne.
I didn't inherit wealth. What I did was work hard. Work hard, save for a deposit, and buy my own home.
Order. The Leader of the Opposition. The Leader of the Opposition will cease interjecting immediately.
If the Leader of the Opposition wanted to participate, he could have asked the question, Mr Speaker. I make that point. But he didn't have the ticker. Gave it to someone up the back. So I make this point. That Paula Pearce, a real estate agent in Griffith, has said this about someone who bought a unit on the weekend. Her and her partner in their 20s and it's their first home. She told me she had always loved the complex. First home buyers in their mid to late 20s dominated inspection numbers. In the electorate of Fraser in Melbourne, Justin Lusu, the selling agent, 4 active bidders, all young professionals, first home buyers, took part in the auction. In Banks, the electorate of the member for Banks, the first home buyer outbid 7 other parties in Mortdale on Saturday. The successful bidder was a young man buying his first home. He intends to move in. Mr Speaker, we are the party of aspiration. We are the party that want Australians to have access to their own home.
Mallee. Member for
Those
Barker.
opposite show just how desperate they are.
Give the call to the member for Tangney.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Deputy Prime Minister. How is the Albanese Labor government invest in defence, delivering well-paid, secure jobs after a wasted decade in the defence industry? Thank you.
Give a call to the Minister for Defence and Deputy Prime Minister.
Well, can I thank the member for his question and acknowledge the incredible and proud way that he represents the beautiful suburbs of Tangi in this parliament. And, Mr Speaker, I got a bit of a taste of that last week when I went with the honourable member to visit a company in his electorate, Australian Safety Engineers in Canning Vale. ASE makes breathing apparatus and air compressors they supply to our special forces. They built an incredible unit which was used at the docking of HMS Anson, the UK Astute-class submarine which visited HMAS Stirling in February-March this year for its successful maintenance period. ASC mainly supplies to the Defence Force. It's not a large company. It has about 30 employees, but in the field in which it operates, it is absolutely world-class. Now, we are building very large industrial sites like the Osborne Naval Shipyard and Henderson, where thousands of people are employed, but so much of Australia's defence industry now is small and medium businesses which have incredible capability that is supporting our Defence Force, and they are benefiting from the fact that in the last 2 financial years we have had the 2 biggest spends on record in defence procurement, and in the financial year that we are in right now, that will finish next week, that spend will be even bigger again. Since coming to office, we've seen employment in defence manufacturing increase by 11%. And that's because we now have a clear strategic direction. We are building a defence force in accordance with that, and we're putting real dollars behind that build. Now, that could not be more different from the way in which the Liberals ran defence during their wasteful decade, because they presided over $42 billion of unfunded defence commitments. And that meant that a full quarter of what defence was expected to procure, it had no money for. An absolute disgrace. The Liberals were really big on defence press releases, but they went completely missing when it came to following that through with action. And as it turns out, press releases don't employ people, defence industry does. Well, Australia's defence industry well knows that under this Prime Minister they have a government which is backing them in supporting the Australian Defence Force in keeping Australians safe.
Before I call the member for May, I'll do my final welcomes for local government. We have Councillor Jeff Marriott from the Yarra Ranges Council, a delegation of Wellington Shire councillors from the electorate of Gippsland, Councillor Tim McMahon and Councillor Edwina Bakwa from the Toowoomba Regional Council. And finally, Councillors from the City of Darwin, Councillor Sam Weston, Councillor Jimmy Boris and Councillor Shani Carson. Give the call to the member for Mayo.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. In South Australia, we're dealing with the effects of the algal bloom, and it's now reported in the media we had 2 suspected cases of H5N1 bird flu. Such an outbreak, much like the algal bloom, would risk environmental, tourism and agriculture communities. What rapid support will be provided to any impacted primary producers, tourism operators and environmental groups?
Give a call to the Prime Minister.
The member for her question, and as she'd be aware, with the algal bloom, we worked very closely with the Malinowskis government to provide support for industry, but also to provide the sort of research that, frankly, will help not just people in South Australia, but indeed world-leading research to deal with the challenge that came from the algal bloom. I visited Kangaroo Island in the members' electorate to see firsthand the issues, and I met with local fishers and local producers as well in the primary sector. That's what our government does. When a challenge happens, we work across the board with industry, with different levels of government, and I certainly worked with them, and the member and I had conversations at that time. We'll continue to work on this challenge as well, and I'd ask the Minister to update the House.
Call to the Minister for Agriculture, the Minister for Fisheries and the Ministry for Forestry.
To the Prime Minister for handing that over in terms of the update on bird flu, and I thank the local member for her interest. She, like many members in this place, are obviously concerned about this not unexpected but still concerning development in relation to the H5 bird flu detections. What I can say is, of course, is I've been really clear that we can't stop the spread of this globally because we can't stop migratory birds coming to Australia, but what we can do is be prepared, and that's exactly what we've done with our early investments, the over $113 million that we have invested in preparedness. And we've done this really closely with the states and territories. We already have agreements in place with states and territories for biosecurity incursions, and we already have one in place particularly for bird flu incursions. So we have already come to those arrangements and provided monies to states and territories to be prepared, as I said in this place earlier in the week. That has helped them in terms of their laboratory testing, in terms of surveillance equipment and in terms of a whole range of equipment that they need on the ground to respond. So that has already been provided to states and territories as part of that $113 million. I have today been on the phone to both the Western Australian Minister for Agriculture and the South Australian Minister for Primary Industries in relation to the bird flu and the cooperation that we have been having with their governments, and we continue to work very, very closely with both the Cook and the Malinowskis governments in relation to these detections. Can I say that they're undertaking testing in their jurisdictions, as you would expect, given the calls and the publicity. We have had an increased number of reports, and they are triaging those reports, and then they're doing local testing, and then if anything comes up, they then go to the CSIRO lab for confirmatory testing. As I've indicated, we have had 2 confirmatory testing from the Western Australian region in terms of those 2 migratory birds, and I was informed just before question time we have had another positive test from the CSIRO lab, and I'll be receiving an update from the Chief Veterinary Officer straight after question time, and then I'll provide an update to the public, as you would expect us to do. But again, I do want to thank the public for their diligence.
Call to the honourable member for Spence.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Defence Industry. How is the Albanese Labor government delivering critical defence capability at the same time as creating jobs for Australians? How does this compare to what the government inherited?
Call to the Minister for Defence Industry and the Minister for Pacific Island Affairs.
I thank the member for Spence for his question and his strong advocacy for defence industry and jobs in his electorate. Speaker, delivering for Australians today and setting Australians up for a more secure future is the government's top priority. And a critical part of that is building our sovereign defence industry so that we can produce the capabilities we need to keep us safe right here at home. And I'm pleased to inform the House that since coming to government, defence industry jobs in SA have increased by 40%. 40%. High-skilled jobs in trades, engineering and research, supporting the development of world-leading capabilities, building bright futures for South Australian families and supporting a future made in Australia. And this future is even more bright this week after the announcement of the biggest defence export deal ever, with a $2.5 billion deal to sell the Dawn Radar to Canada. This will support 1,000 jobs, many of them in the member for Spencer's electorate. But our investment is not just limited to SA. We've also signed a $1 billion export deal to sell Boxer combat reconnaissance vehicles to Germany, supporting over 1,000 direct and indirect jobs, mostly in your electorate, Mr Speaker. Or the $7 billion we're putting into advanced counter-drone capabilities, starting with contracts for AIM Defence for their lasers and SciPark for their kamikaze drones. We've built a factory that is producing the world-leading ghost sharks right now in Sydney, creating just under 1,000 direct and indirect jobs. And last week I christened the first of 40 new Blue Bottle drone boats built in Morisset in the Memphis Hunters electorate. When complete, the fleet of 55 Blue Bottles will be the largest fleet of autonomous surface vessels in the world. Speaker, these aren't isolated examples. Our record investment in defence is leading to an expansion of our sovereign defence industry. Defence manufacturing output has grown by 35% since we came to government. And as the Deputy Prime Minister said, defence manufacturing jobs have grown by 11% last year alone. 11%. And Speaker, this compares to the chaos and spin of the last Liberal government. Defence manufacturing fell by 18%, while consultants grew by 15%. This was typical of a government that was all announcement and zero delivery, all red carpets and Top Gun music. They produced media releases. We're producing missiles. They built consultancies. We're building drones. They closed shipyards. We're opening factories. Only Labor can be trusted with defence.
Order. The House comes to order. We'll hear from the member for Flinders.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Housing. According to media reports, the Minister for Housing negatively geared an investment property which was sold in 2023 for $1.375 million. And in the last month's budget, the government broke its promise and changed the negative gearing rules. Can the Minister explain why it's fair and financially sensible for her to have benefited from access to negative gearing and then to pull up this ladder of opportunity from millions of aspirational Australians?
Order. The Minister for Housing has the call.
Thank you so much, Speaker. And I thank the member for Flinders for her question, but I will say I respect her and this is beneath her. It is truly beneath her. As was the question from the member for Lyme.
The Minister will pause. We'll deal with this. Has the manager got a point of order?
I thought you were going to deal with it, Speaker, so you're impugning motive on the person asking the question.
Yeah, I mean, I don't... Order. Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a long bow, that point of order, but yeah, you know, if you're going to ask that question involving a minister's own arrangements, which I've already told the House I'm not particularly comfortable with, because it just opens up this can of worms where, as I mentioned yesterday, dignity and respect of the House is important. So, fair go, Manager. If you're going to ask that question, the Minister is quite rightly going to respond in, I think, a fairly forceful way. She's entitled to do so, so she has the call.
Thank you so much, Speaker. Speaker, the reforms that are before the parliament with regard to housing are not about the 150 people that sit in this chamber. They're about the 28 million outside of this chamber. And, Speaker, I think that the member is trying to make a point that she feels is about hypocrisy. But I tell you what would really be hypocritical. It would be a person like me who is lucky enough to live in the home that I own.
Order.
creating a system and perpetuating a system that leaves behind the generation coming.
The member for Cowper is going to have to leave the chamber. He heard, like everyone else, me say, "You're on a warning," and I don't know why someone is saying, "Well done." It's not a badge of honour to be disrespectful. Whoever said "well done" is not respecting this House. It's not a prize or a badge. It's a mark of disrespect. The Minister will continue.
Speaker, again, what is truly hypocritical here is the group of people who sit opposite me, the vast majority of whom own their own home, many of whom own investment properties, and who are continuing to lock generations of young people out of the housing market.
Order.
Now, Speaker, it's really quite simple. You're either on the side of change and you're on the side of first home buyers, or you're the last man standing defending a broken housing market in our country. And we're all going to get the choice on Thursday to come back into the parliament and to express again our views on this issue. And I tell you what the Labor Party will be doing. The Labor Party will be coming into this parliament and we will be voting for a tax cut for every single one of Australia's 13 million workers. And we will be voting to create a fairer housing market for Australians. And I say again to those opposite, you must be blind if you cannot see how much our broken housing market is hurting Australians. How can you be coming into this House again and again defending the status quo and saying that nothing needs to change? I've spoken to the parliament before, Speaker, about the fact that a low-income young person in our country today is half as likely to own their own home than they were in the year that I was born. And you know what those opposite want to do about that? Precisely nothing. Well, we have a different point of view, Speaker. We see how much pain this is causing Australians, and to Australians who are watching at home, I want to say to you directly, we see you. We see the pain this is causing for you. We see you doing all the right things and trying to get ahead and not being able to do so. That is why we are standing up and making a change, and if those opposite had any concern for the housing needs of Australians, they would come with us.
Order. 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 The Minister for Social Services. We'll hear from the honourable member for Canberra.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Social Services. How is the Albanese Labor government delivering on its commitment to strengthen paid parental leave, and what are the risks to this?
Good call to the Minister for Social Services.
Thank you so much, Mr Speaker. And it was so lovely to see the member for Canberra this morning with beautiful little baby Joseph, and we had baby Augie and baby Zoe visiting us this morning as well, talking about the fact that in a week's time paid parental leave will increase again for Australian families from the 1st of July. Before the Rudd and Gillard governments, it's hard to remember that before the Rudd and Gillard governments, Australia was one of the very few developed countries in the world that didn't have a paid parental leave scheme. Labor introduced it, Labor built it, and it's Labor that continues to expand it. From the 1st of July, so next week, parents with new little beautiful babies will get more time off with those babies. So we're going to that full 6 months of paid parental leave. They'll receive more money. The actual rate week on week is going up, so they'll receive more than $1,000 a week when they're home with their babies. And of course, since last year, those parents on paid parental leave have been getting superannuation, so that they don't see that big gender pay gap in super as well. And of course, more people will be eligible as well as we increase the thresholds for eligibility. Thanks to this Labor government under this Prime Minister, families will receive almost $30,000 during that 6 months of paid leave, more than doubling what they were getting under those opposite. But those opposite, of course, have always been a bit of a mixed picture when it comes to paid parental leave. The former Treasurer, Joe Hockey, he called mothers double dippers on Mother's Day. The former Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, called them rorters, and the member for Goldstein, of course, he said it's not my choice that women have children, it's genetic. And now we've got...
Order. The Minister will pause. The member for Lindsay on a point of order.
Of course, on relevance, there was no mention of the coalition, and the coalition, in fact, has support.
Resume your seat. And no one heard that end bit because that wasn't within the standing orders. And once I say resume your seat, no one hears what you're saying, so that's fine. But, yeah, the person next to you can, but no one else can. The question was about what are the risks to this policy. All right, well, we'll listen carefully and I'll hear what the Minister has to say and see what she says. The Minister has the call.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The member for Goldstein doesn't. And now we've got Pauline Hanson and One Nation saying that they want to strip away workers' rights and roll back paid parental leave. Since 2017, Senator Hanson has been saying she doesn't support paid parental leave. More than a decade ago, she said that women get themselves pregnant for the money. And more recently, a couple of weeks ago, she said they have the equipment. That's what they're here for. And then, when she was asked at the press club if she supported it, twice, the ABC checked with her. She said she didn't support it, but now that she's had pushback from Australian families, suddenly she's on board. Well, someone who has been opposed to paid parental leave for a decade, now saying, oh, no, I don't, no, they misunderstood me when I said again and again that I don't support it. No one believes it. If Australians, and we know they do, Australians want paid parental leave, it's only Labor that backs it.
Give the call to the honourable member for Wentworth.
My question is for the Minister for Workplace Relations. The government's Workplace Relations Bill would allow the Commonwealth to legally discriminate against businesses without an enterprise agreement or those without a union named. But a not dissimilar scheme in Victoria was found by the Watson report to have been used by the CFMU, costing taxpayers billions and supporting organised crime and weaponised. So my question is, how can these provisions be a good idea from either the point of view of preventing corruption or getting value for money for government spending?
Call to the Minister for Employment and the Minister for Workplace Relations.
Thank you, Speaker. I'd like to thank the member for her question. Go through a couple of elements of her question. Firstly, I would say that our reforms in the bill will allow the Commonwealth Government spending to support secure jobs and fair working conditions by preferencing enterprise agreements negotiated in good faith and are genuinely agreed where appropriate to do so. Enterprise agreements are a transparent and effective way of delivering secure jobs and fair conditions for workers, as well as flexibility and productivity for employers. Importantly, the bill does not impose any obligations on the Commonwealth to do anything such as require an enterprise agreement. When it comes to construction, though, there has been no government that has taken more action to stamp out corruption in the construction industry than this government. In recognition of that, as we're developing our Secure Jobs Code, we have recognised a different approach is required in construction. And that is why, at the same time as I announced this bill, I also announced the Construction Code consultation that will clearly outline what good behaviour looks like when we, as the Commonwealth, procure in the construction industry. So, I have to say, we are doing a lot of diligent work. We are working through the National Construction Industry Forum, which is a tripartite forum. Our government has taken tripartism very seriously. We are not shutting out employers, we're not shutting out unions, we are bringing people together. And that is why the bill is called the Cooperative Workplaces Bill, because this is very important, and no other government, as I said, has taken this issue as seriously as we have, and I'm happy to work with the member in the future to make sure we get those good outcomes that workers deserve, that taxpayers deserve, and that we will work towards.
Call to the honourable member for Barton.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Local Government. How is the Albanese Labor government delivering for local governments across Australia, and what approaches would leave local government worse off?
I call to the Minister for Emergency Management, the Minister for Regional Development, the Minister for Local Government and the Minister for Territories.
Thank you so much, Mr Speaker, and I thank the member for Barton, someone who has served her community as a member of the Georges River Council, a strong advocate for local council as well. And can I shout out all of the mayors and councillors who have been in Canberra this week for the National General Assembly. There's some mayors from the Eyre Peninsula up there behind us. I know there was mayor and councillors from Cocos, Keeling Island behind us too, which I know the member for Lingiari was keen on. It was a real honour to stand with local governments on Monday night at the National Awards, talking about the incredible work that they're doing in their local communities, and I've had the pleasure of meeting many local councils across the country this week. They play a critical and trusted role providing services in our communities, and we know our communities rely on those. Mr Speaker, the Albanese government has a long-standing commitment to local councils, and our budget reaffirms that. We've committed over $3.6 billion through financial assistance grants, and that's an increase of over 5% from last year. And how does that compare with other options? Well, I heard the member for Park say it's not enough. Well, he might want to remember that when those opposite were in government, they froze indexation on financial assistance grants, ripping $1 billion out of the sector that provides services and infrastructure in communities that our members rely on. We want to help communities who have got cash flow pressures now, which is why we've advanced financial assistance grants. And in the budget, we've committed $2 billion through our local infrastructure fund, and that's on top of the $1.5 billion from the housing support program in the last term. Things that fund footpaths, cycleways,
on my left, the member for Grey.
Bridges, culverts, stormwater, drainage works, water and wastewater infrastructure. We've doubled Roads to Recovery to $1 billion a year to support every local council to build, maintain and upgrade roads. There's $200 million through our Safer Local Roads and Infrastructure program. $150 million to our road black spot funding, targeting significant measures that do great work in our local communities. Last week, $3.5 million in road safety upgrades were announced across Tassie. This includes $437,000 for a new roundabout in Devonport. These investments help communities right across the country because our government is all about delivering programs, services and infrastructure that support local communities, because supporting local communities is something that this side of the House is all about. We won't rip money out of a local government sector like those opposite did the last time they were in government.
Prime Minister.
Further questions to be placed on the notice paper.
I thank that.